just for the audience sake, we have had a affordable housing element of our general plan since its inception. The new general plan has been in 2001 had an affordable housing element. The state requires us to have an affordable housing element in our general plan and code. So since the mid-90s, we've had that requirement on developers. They provide 10% of their project in affordable housing. So, for example, if you had 100 units, you have to either pay a fee in lieu for 10 more units or build 10 units on site. It doesn't affect the density. It's over and above what the allowed density is. But we've had that code in place. Several years ago, that code was amended to go from a mandatory requirement of 10% to the developer being able to submit a study to show if the developer and his project was creating the need for additional affordable housing. I think that came about because the council felt that there were some projects that produced market rate affordable housing that was at the 80% area median income, so they felt like we didn't need to provide more additional affordable housing. As we've looked at that, the code hasn't really worked out that well. It's not a mandatory requirement. Also, with all the projects we're seeing come online, we see the need in the future to have someone professional manage that. If we have an affordable housing project, those people need to be income qualified to rent those units, and we need someone that handles that. The units need to be managed so that they're not subleased at a higher rate, those types of things. So anyway, we went through an RFP process and sent that out throughout the state and locally. We only had, I think, 3 or 4 responses come back. Mr. Loomis was the one that was qualified to do that, Mountainlands Housing Trust. The only qualified proposal that came back. So we went through it. We've been working with him for several months. Another thing we'll need to do is come up with a fee schedule for his payment of work. But that's needs to be done later. One of the things he committed to do was update our code. So that's why we're here tonight.
Thank you, Doug. I see you have a very full agenda tonight, so I'll try to get through this as quickly as possible. But certainly we'll take the time to answer any questions you have. Just to give you some background, Mountainlands Community Housing Trust is a nonprofit chartered in 1993 with a mission to create, preserve, and advocate for affordable housing in Summit and Wasatch counties. We have done some work over here really since the Housing Authority got started here in the early 2000s. We worked with them quite a bit. We assisted the Housing Authority in developing the Prestige Senior Living Center and did Elmridge Apartments. It was back in 2010. We have a similar contract with Cindy County where we work with them on their affordable housing code, work with developers, meeting their obligation, and most importantly, also stewardship after that occurs. Basically, affordable housing has 3 critical elements to it. And first is that people be income qualified. Secondly, we want to create a maximum sales price or rental price so it will meet the needs of those people and households we're trying to target. And permanent affordability, and of course, in the case of for sale units, we need owner occupancy. This shows you what moderate income housing in Wasatch County comes to. I have to apologize. I've got a little eye problem going on here tonight, so I'm going to get in front of this so I can see it. And the median income is how they base affordable housing, and under the state statute, moderate income housing is 80% and below. And this gives you an example of 50% up to 100% of what the income is for various size households. The standard is kind of a 80% four-person household, which you can see in Wasatch County is about $57,700. And using the median income, right now, just doing some brief research over here, the average price of a medium sales price, excuse me, is for a single-family residence is $383,000. For a condominium, it's about $200,000. So you can see at the different income levels what those people can afford and what the deficit is. Clearly, in the case of single-family residence, there's a considerable gap for those people who are in that 80% below bracket. These are the rental prices, and this is set by Utah Housing Corporation. This includes rent and utilities. So you can see at the various income prices and size units what they can afford, what the maximum rents can be, and down at the bottom shows the market rents. Now, a few years ago, 2012, I think they were completed. We did 99 units between Prestige and Elmbridge. Wasatch Commons was built at exactly the same time as was Liberty Station. And that was about 320 units that came online at the same time. Half of those were affordable, and they all rented up as soon as the COs were issued. And today there's a 1 to 2 year wait list for the affordable units, and very difficult to even get into the market units at this point. So this is what the statutory requirements are that you come up with a moderate income housing plan in the general plan. And with that, you need a needs assessment, which shows the need, and the plan provides for realistic opportunities for people who want to live in the community, to live in the community. And I think 3 or 4 years ago, there was some recitals in the general plan that actually made references to the property that's presently being developed over by the Walmart. And they were saying that that would fill the need. And at that point, maximum sales prices you saw was about $238,000. And I think those units now start at about $300,000 if you want a garage or maybe a front porch or something. It just gets added to it. So there really is nothing in the market that is doing it. So public policy requires that you adopt measures within the land management code that will provide for a variety of affordable housing. Currently in the general plan, and this is some of the things we spoke about, it does provide for affordable housing, but it makes a specific reference to the surplus of homes over 80% AMI, and I think since that time the market's gone up. But it really doesn't address particularly the need below. One of the concerns, and it's clearly stated about 3 times in the code, is Wasatch County, Heber City has a similar provision, doesn't want to be where the affordable housing for Summit County comes. And I think everybody here now recognizes that with all the development that's happening here, being the fastest growing county, or one of the fastest growing counties in the country, and when you see the now hiring signs like we have in Park City, Sunnyvale Basin, you see them all over this community too. It's very difficult to find qualified workers that make the lower income. So it's clearly a need that is not carry over from Park City or from Summit County, but one that exists today and one that's developing for sure here in Wasatch County. This was a study by Mountainlands Association of Government in 2013, and as you can see, they show a deficit below the lower income limits currently as of 3 years ago, and that was, again, probably with the prices going up in the real estate market and rents going up, probably a much greater number today. So I don't know if you had a chance to look through the proposed amendments that we sent to you. It was kind of an awkward format to present it in. But the biggest thing, as Doug mentioned, was right now the code was amended in 2013 when I think there was a feeling that there wasn't much of a need for affordable housing. And they made it, they took the mandatory provision of 10% of each development and kind of made it very discretionary and very arbitrary. And we've seen letters that kind of go through and they say this is what the development is. It's going to serve families that make over 80% median income. And then at the very bottom, they say we don't think it'll have any impact on the workforce in the community. Therefore, we shouldn't have to build any affordable housing. And that's like a one-page study, supposedly. So this basically changes things to adopt. The public policy is we need workforce housing here. We need it for our essential workers, for our teachers, for our police force, for our county workers and city workers. So it's a mandatory provision now that one way or the other, whether it's paying for new things or developing on site, it'll be something that's accomplished. Right now, to my knowledge, there's no for sale units that are truly affordable in Wasatch County. There's probably less than 150. No, actually take that back, less than 175 rental units that are income restricted. And other than the Fox Bay development, which basically allows for a buyout by paying in a lieu fee after the fact, there's no income qualifications, owner occupancy requirements, restricted sale prices for any for sale units. There's been a couple of attempts on Heber. They have a couple of them. To my knowledge, there's none in Wasatch County, and that's what we're hoping to create for the local workforce. So again, the summary and the main proposal is public policy making it mandatory. There's mostly just cleanup in the language. Some of it's similar language to, and I think both Heber and Wasatch County adopted their codes similar to the codes in Park City and Summit County, but most of the amendments that we're proposing are ones that clean it up a little bit and deal with some of the issues we've dealt with in Summit County so they don't happen here. Again, the mandatory requirement, we're proposing that, and one of the big issues is it's totally arbitrary. It doesn't really say much about what the study doesn't say anything about what the study should be to speak of. And again, we're just asking that it be changed to a 10% mandatory requirement. The state statute actually talks about a variety of housing, so it's not just 80% for everything. And we're proposing that we have a variety of eligible households, so there needs to be a mix. People probably earning between 50 and 80% for sale units, and for rent units, 60% and below. There's a huge need. Again, median income, half the people have an income above that, half the people have an income below that. So if you're looking at 80%, that's about 40% of the people in the community that need this kind of housing, particularly with the sales and rentals going up. The use of in lieu fees right now, the fees are substantial because, as I said, there's not been much built here. A lot of fees have been paid to the Wasatch County Housing Authority. So here we're providing that a fund be set up for affordable housing in the county, and that there are solutions listed, not just subsidies and some of the things that have been done, but there's a list of uses of that money as well, so it hopefully will be utilized. As I mentioned, stewardship is a big requirement. If you build it and people ignore it, the restrictions, then you really haven't accomplished anything. So we're looking at some proposals in the code as well that will deal with some of the stewardship issues. And also in it shows how you calculate some of the sales prices and those type of items. One of the things we really experience, normally you want affordable housing integrated into the community in a subdivision, but it's extremely difficult to create it, build it, and make it work, finance it, and get the funding for it. So what we're saying here is there needs to be a variety of design and construction, but let's keep it open so that it's not just every subdivision has to do exactly the same thing. Let's let the council decide if something works, if we isolate the housing in a particular subdivision. If you have 10-acre lots, you don't want single-family residence mixed in with 10 acres. It may make sense to isolate one building because you can get favorable financing for that. So it doesn't make it absolute, it gives some discretion. And this is basically a restatement of that philosophy. This was, again, just cleaning up some things that are similar. Right now it's kind of ambiguous about who has to create the affordable housing, but we list 5 units or fewer don't have to. First 5,000 square feet are exempted in commercial development or redevelopment. If it hasn't been exempted before, things like schools, churches, public facilities don't have to provide it. And then if any commercial development expands, they could trigger a additional affordable housing if they haven't already used the 5,000 square foot exemption. One of the issues is, well, it's not even an issue, and it's in the code right now, and it provides for various employee generation for commercial development based on the nature of the business. And this provision allows for an independent study by a third party that the county chooses, not that the developer chooses. There's a lot of examples. For example, a hotel may be listed in the code currently as a full-service hotel, but if they don't have food facilities, obviously they can prove that the employee generation is less. So this provides on a rotating basis, we select the third party that will determine what the employee generation will be, and the county and council can accept it or reject it. And again, a lot of the things we did were just minor cleanup, and as I say, it's kind of awkward the way it's presented because we've eliminated some sections, but I think that if you've had a chance to look at it, you can see what some of the changes are, and we're happy to answer any questions. And it's kind of confusing in the code the way it exists now with the resort employees and the effect that that has. There's some provisions that seem to indicate that they count against the affordable housing obligation. There's some provisions that seem to indicate that only a portion of it does. So again, just some cleanup on the resort employee housing. And one thing we implemented in the mid-2000s in Summit County and Park City, there was a lot of abuse, and people would sell restricted units for greater than that, or you buy my furniture, my partially furnished 1,000 square foot condo for $100,000, and I'll sell you my unit. I don't think anybody's stupid enough to do that now. But we put in a provision for a criminal misdemeanor, and actually it's in the code right now in Wasatch County, but we changed the wording on it a little bit. But this hopefully will keep sellers, buyers, real estate agents, even title companies and mortgage companies who, there are several examples of mortgage companies that have ignored the restrictions and provided first loans in excess of the maximum sales price or put a second on it that shouldn't be there, that basically affects the long-term affordability. And frankly, it's probably predator lending in their point too, on their part, because we're trying to protect the people who are in this housing. So this gives some teeth to the restrictions. Okay, so I think That is all I have to present. As I say, we worked on experience. I've had experience in it, and I'm a lawyer by training, and Steve Laurent here, who did a lot of the work on it, is also a lawyer, so we've been in touch with staff and to some extent the legal department earlier too. So,
okay, thank you. Questions then for Loomis? Go ahead.
I just read this quickly in the last 2 days, Mr. Loomis, and I think everybody's in agreement we need an affordable housing ordinance, and I think it's important, and I think it's great, but I've noticed some inconsistencies, and we didn't get all the materials that you presented tonight. Just like that very last thing you presented, the description of 1630.14 enforcement, we just got one sentence instead of the whole paragraph. And there were some other things like in some of the tables, the numbers don't match up with some of the examples and stuff like that. And I'd love to work with you on it. I'm kind of in favor of tabling it so I don't take a lot of time from everybody, but I'd be more than willing to meet with you individually or someone from your staff and go through all my questions. We got a long agenda. I just would feel bad about making a motion that we approve it and send it to the county council, because then they'll have to take even more time to discover those same things, and it makes it hard for them because they're busier than we are. That's my hesitation. I got probably a dozen kind of specific questions, but I feel like it might be more easily addressed if I just met with somebody individually.
Do you think it would be advantageous for the council to meet with them in a separate day or time?
I'm willing to I'm willing to make a motion for the council to meet with them if they like. I'd be willing to meet with them individually and spend a couple hours of my time going through what my questions are, and then come back to the council and make a motion. I'll do whatever the majority of the council would like. It doesn't seem fair to jump him. By way of example, I was looking at table 2, and it says recreation bars and restaurants are at 6.2 rate for full-time equivalents, but then when they do the restaurant bar example down before, they use a 6.5 factor, and you say, which is it, the 6.2 or the 6.5? That's a little petty thing, but there are a lot of other things where I'm not sure I really understand. And I've got a lot of notes in here. I tend to go through these things pretty detailed. I'd be more than willing to take the assignment, much like Gerald took when the meeting with Wallsburg. I'd be more than willing to meet with Mountainlands over the next month and spend 3 or 4 hours and come back. Or somebody can make a motion to approve it as it is and just give it to the county commission, whatever the majority of you'd like to do.
Discussion.
That's probably a great idea. I don't understand that. Dealt with that a few times. Definitely must understand.
I'm willing to go with him or to ask more questions. Our company needs it, so I'm apt to, what I saw, move forward with it, but I will need to go and ask more questions so that we're out to know everything. But maybe we don't know everything right now, so I'm willing to have another meeting or go with them to
It sounds like we could almost have another meeting after we discussed it.
Yeah, why don't we see if we can meet with them, and then we'll make a presentation.
Is there a figure that designates affordable housing? 100,000, 20,000, 50,000?
I don't know, it's like a debate. We hadn't seen the numbers that they presented on the screen. They're not in our packet. The packet that you presented on the screen to talk about this. So when you threw them up there, I thought to myself, well, is that for just Wasatch County, or is that Wasatch Summit? Because really, realistically, it's a Wasatch Summit.
well, it is Wasatch County, and those numbers change all the time. So these are the examples today based on the current interest rates and those type of things. So if interest rates adjust, the price goes up and down, and the median income is adjusted every year too. So that's why the specific numbers are not in the code.
And I don't think I have a concern with the numbers that they proposed. There's just some areas where they haven't proposed rates or numbers. I'm curious about those. And then there's just some inconsistencies inconsistencies, like in addition to the table one I presented on page 5, they talk about section 16